Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Oxford Cannabinoid Technology Holdings Results Investor Presentation. Throughout this presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just please simply type in your question and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during this meeting. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. These will be available via your Investor Meet Company dashboard, and as usual, we'll send you an email when they're ready for your review. I'd also like to remind you that this presentation is being recorded. Before we begin, we would like to submit the following poll, and if you'd give that your kind attention, we would be very grateful. And I'd now like to hand over to Karen Lowe, CFO, and John Lucas. Good afternoon to you both.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm John Lucas, CEO of OCT.
I'm Karen Lowe, CFO of OCT. Nice to meet you all.
And why don't we get started with the presentation? So we'll go to the first slide. This is the highlights of what we've been able to accomplish since the IPO. Since that IPO, we made good progress across all of our programs. In July, we kicked off preclinical development of our lead candidate, OCT 461201. For this program, we contracted with company Evotec, and we did this because they're the only provider that can carry out both the manufacturing and the safety toxicology pharmacokinetics. And this is all done under one roof. And we think by doing so, we significantly reduce our risk of delay. And last week, we announced the preclinical development of our second program, and that is the program 2. This program is a combination of phytocannabinoids for pulmonary administration. In late September, we announced the exclusive license for Canopy Growth's entire cannabinoid derivative library, including 335 synthesized and tested compounds, which we believe will de-risk and accelerate our third and fourth programs. And finally, we announced that OCT will seek admission on the OTCQB trading platform. We believe this will allow retail investors in the US to more easily trade our stock and increase our liquidity. Now, OCT is a pharmaceutical company. It's not a medical cannabis company. And this is an important distinction. When we formed OCT, we evaluated two business models. We evaluated the medical cannabis and the pharmaceutical prescription medicine model. And we decided the pharmaceutical model was the best opportunity because it allowed us to create products that we could have medical claims, that could be prescribed by physicians, that would be reimbursed by payers, would have market exclusivity, and would have the largest return on investment. I'm not going to say much on the management team, except that we have 75 years of combined experience with the skills necessary to successfully deliver on our drug development programs. And like the management team, we have an experienced board with relevant backgrounds and experience, including the pharmaceutical industry and finance. In terms of the timeline of the company, OCT was formed in 2017 around an umbrella agreement with the University of Oxford. Note that OCT is not a spin out of Oxford, and the university has no equity stake in the company. In 2018, we contracted with Oxford Antibiotic Group to create a proprietary cannabinoid derivative library for OCT. We also closed our Series A round investment with Imperial Brands leading the round. In 2019, we in-licensed our lead candidate, OCT 461201, and in May, we had our IPO. And since then, we've started preclinical development of our two lead programs, as we discussed, and closed the Canopy deal for the other two programs. Looking forward, we aim to complete preclinical development of the first two programs next summer and take both programs into phase 1 clinical trials by the end of Q3 2022. The pie chart that, that's all right. The pie chart that you see on the right, that shows the total addressable market for cannabinoids broken down into the types of pain that we think cannabinoids can treat. As we evaluate other indications in pain, that will increase the number of segments. But right now, it adds up to over a 40 billion market that's growing very rapidly. Now, initially, we're pursuing two of these segments, neuropathic pain and visceral pain, which make up the serviceable available market. And the serviceable obtainable market refers to those indications that we're actually pursuing. And the 1.55 billion SOM represents only 2 candidates and 3 indications. So this number is going to increase as we add new indications and new drug candidates. Now let's talk about how we build and advance our pipeline. We develop 3 types of compounds. The first are natural phytocannabinoids. And for these compounds, we pursue orphan indications for market exclusivity. A second type of compound is where we chemically modify a natural phytocannabinoid to form a cannabinoid derivative. Examples of this is our own proprietary library and the Canopy library that we recently in-licensed. A third type of compound is a cannabinoid mimetic with a completely novel chemical structure. OCT 461201 is an example. And we in-license compounds falling into any one of these categories, as in-licensing allows us to advance our pipeline faster as they start further in development. Oh, I'm sorry. We currently have a, a partnering or a virtual model with several partners, both academic and commercial. And the choice of partner depends on the type and the stage of research and development. Importantly, though, OCT owns all the IP that's arising from many of our partners. And turning to monetization of our programs, our aim is to take our programs to at least through phase 2, where we can recognize the greatest value inflection. However, our goal is to directly commercialize some of our drug products. The first part of our, if we want to call it the secret sauce of OCT, is the ability to select compounds and indications. And the other part is our ability to build incredible teams around our drug development programs. And through our partners, we have the same expertise and capabilities as a big pharma company. If we move to our pipeline, we have a well-differentiated pipeline. It's not going to collapse if we have a drug failure. The other programs will, continue on unimpeded. And this offers significant downside protection. But more importantly is the upsides. Let's talk about the programs. The first programs are lead candidate 461201. This is a cannabinoid mimetic developed by a spin-out of Pfizer. The compound is a highly potent and selective CB2 agonist. What this means in layman's terms is no psychoactive properties. This is going to be a first-in-class compound for neuropathic pain and neuroinflammation. And the first indication we're pursuing, is post-herpetic neuralgia. It's a pain condition arising from shingles, and we are pursuing post-herpetic neuralgia because of the homogeneous nature of the patient population, and this reduces the risk associated with pain trials. And the second indication is visceral pain associated with irritable bowel syndrome. OCT, as we 461201, as we discussed, is in preclinical development. It's already demonstrated safety in rats and dogs, so in 2 species, and efficacy in 3 in vivo pain models. And we're developing 461201 as a pill. And as we stated, we aim to be in phase 1 clinical trials by the end of Q3 2022, advancing into phase 2 clinical trials in Q2 of 2023. Program 2, this is our second candidate. It's a combination of phytocannabinoids, and because we're using phytocannabinoids, we don't expect any safety issues. And we are pursuing orphan indications to obtain market exclusivity for this program. The first indication, or the orphan indication for this drug candidate, is trigeminal neuralgia, as we announced recently. It's a pain condition that causes sudden and excruciating pain. And this drug product is going to be administered to the lungs to decrease the onset time and decrease liver metabolism. We aim to be in phase 1 clinical trials Q3 of 2022 on the same path as 461201 and advancing into phase 2 clinical trials in Q2 of 2023. Our third program will screen and identify a cannabinoid derivative from the combined OCT and Canopy libraries that is active in a neuropathic pain model. The addition of the Canopy compounds more than quadruples the size of our cannabinoid derivative library. And we believe that this is going to increase our probability of success. We aim to be ready for preclinical development in Q2 of 2023. And finally, our program 4, with the addition of the Canopy library, we've changed our approach to program for. However, the end goal remains exactly the same. But instead of screening a large random library of compounds, we're taking a more focused approach with a set of compounds from the combined OCT and Canopy libraries. And we aim to identify a first-in-class drug candidate for pain, targeting as of this date an undisclosed cannabinoid receptor. The drug candidate is going to have broader use, though, across additional therapeutic areas, including neurology, inflammation, and oncology. If you take a look at our timelines, in our Gantt, we expect our first drug approval and commercialization to occur in 2027, to be followed soon thereafter by subsequent approvals. A key synergy of our product strategy is that we select drug candidates that can be repurposed across multiple indications. You can see this OCT 461201 repeated 3 times. The advantage of designing drug candidates for multiple indications is that you don't have to repeat the same study, the early studies for preclinical development and the safety in phase 1. You can go directly into your efficacy studies in phase 2, and this adds, much more value to the program because now you have something that's closer to commercialization, that's de-risked. It also offers downside protection because if you have multiple indications and one fails, you can still take the other ones forward. And we do this by design for all of our programs. We didn't demonstrate it on this slide just for the sake of room. And that ends my portion, and I'd like to hand it over now to Karen to give us a financial overview.
Thanks, John. Thanks very much. Okay, so as you've heard now from John, we're very much on target as to what was in the prospectus where we are now. And the same holds true for the financial position. We're firmly on budget. When we listed on the 21st of May, we raised the 16.5 million, which gave us 14.8 after the costs. By the year end, that was a 14.6 million. That is obviously, it's a key asset of the business. That's what's driving the current ratio of 15.8. And my job really is to maximise the use of that on the research element. So you'll have seen from the P&L, which obviously is not varied much from what was in the prospectus, we've got tight control over costs there from every aspect. And it really is maximising the funds available that can go directly to the research investment. On the P&L, as well as those costs, obviously the research expenditure reduced in the run-up to the listing itself. But obviously, since year end, you'll have seen in the annual accounts that costs, we've invested 1.65 million on research, half of which is on programme 1. Other items of note in the P&L are the exceptional items where we drew out the costs that were expensed relating to the listing and also the share-based payments. So on a like-for-like basis, you'll see that the administration costs for the year were similar, research ran down, and then over in the balance sheet, we've obviously got that cash where we're going to invest very wisely. It's forecast at the moment to take us right through until sort of January, February time of 23. And that links back to the programmes that John's just talked about there. And it's about making sure they stay on track and they stay on budget. We're also looking, as we invest more in the research programmes, making sure that we're maximising the tax credit opportunities there for the investment in research and then going on to development. So we've got tight controls in place. We've got excellent governance. We're fully compliant with the QCA's code of governance. We've got audit committees set up. We've got rigorous risk management processes. So we're in a really strong position financially. It's about protecting that investment, making it last as long as we can. Say we're fully on budget and maximising the returns from that. So financially, really strong, extremely happy position that we're at and what we're forecast to be at. And that really is it from a financial point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we can take some questions now.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Karen and John, for updating investors this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of the screen. But just while the company take a few moments to review those questions submitted already, I'd like to remind you the recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your Investor Meet Company dashboard. I'd also like to remind you that your feedback is important to the company, and when this presentation has ended, you'll be redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the company can better understand your views and expectations. John, Karen, that's not a long while to look at the questions that you've received, but if I could ask you to be so kind just to open up that Q&A tab, and if I could ask you to read out the questions and give a response where it's appropriate to do so, and I'll pick up from you at the end.
Okay. So the first question is, what do you believe will be the immediate driver to create value to shareholders? The immediate drivers has been the decisions that we make now that are going to take our programs through into the clinic and out of phase 1 by the end of this funding round in Q2 of 2023. It's we're making decisions now to have those programs ready for phase 2. And the big value drivers are when we finish preclinical development, each time we finish one of these phases, and then we move into phase 1, get through phase 1, and we're ready for phase 2. So advancing our programs, the decisions that we're making now to advance our programs is the key drivers. There's another question here. It says, are you able to say anything about the PCBs used in program 2? A number of companies are developing THC or CBD THC combinations and pain indications. Is your product using or likely to use different cannabinoids, for example? Also, have you filed any IP on this program? For where we use phytocannabinoids, we are pursuing orphan indications. And when you pursue an orphan indication, for that indication, you will have market exclusivity. And you have market exclusivity in the US for 7 years, market exclusivity in Europe and Japan 10 years. So even if there's other products being developed or on the market, they would be for other indications. So when a physician prescribes our THC CBD, we're the only ones on the formulary for that particular indication because we have the market exclusivity there. And with the orphan exclusivity, the regulatory agencies won't approve another same type of combination for that indication until that exclusivity expires. But right now we haven't announced, and I should add, we haven't announced yet what the cannabinoids that we're going to use yet. That's still confidential. One question here is, what did the Canopy deal cost? I'm sorry, that's confidential and we can't disclose that. Is OCT 46-1201 likely to be administered as an oral dosage form? Absolutely, this is an oral dosage form. It's going to be a pill. It's either going to be once a day or twice a day. That's what we're developing it as a solid oral dosage form. It's a small molecule. It's just like, the type of compounds and the pills that you would get, from the chemist. It's that kind of, drug product. Oh, here's a question. Can you provide details about what screening the Canopy growth portfolio of compound entails? Well, what it entails first is, and this gets a little bit deep into the science, but you take your target receptor and you see if the compounds bind. And if the compounds bind, then you'll do other types of assays to see if they're compatible with cells and so forth, and then you'll put it into an animal and you'll look at the blood levels and you see where it goes, and then you put it into a disease model. But if you have compounds that are doing so-so, then you'll do some medicinal chemistry to improve that. But the actual screens and so forth, we haven't disclosed that yet. That's getting into the confidential information, but that's basically how the process goes. It's going to be like any other pharmaceutical drug development process, although, we are fast tracking it as much as possible. The company says that USA OTC listing is to improve liquidity, and yes, that is in part. Does it therefore admit there is a liquidity issue with the stock? And what can it do as well as OTC listing to improve it? Well, I think when you look at the, just the number of shares traded, we're not happy with the liquidity right now. What are we going to do to improve this? Exactly what we said we're going to do. That's how we're going to improve this. We've advanced our programs, and they're on track, on time, on budget. We're doing exactly what we said, and that's what shareholders bought into. And the story hasn't changed. We're right on track. When do you expect to trade in the US OTC? Are there any plans for Nasdaq, etc.? I think that was in the last announcement. It said by December that that will be the OTCQB will be up and running. Are there any plans for Nasdaq? Not at this time. There's not, but that doesn't mean in the future that won't change. Have you, last one, have you published any preclinical data on 461201 in models of PHN in the scientific literature? We have not published any data on 461201 at this time on PHN.
Thank you, John. Karen, I think that's pretty much all the questions that are appropriate for you to answer at this point. So unless any other questions come in, which of course, if they do, John, Karen will make those available to you for you to look at after this meeting has ended. I know investor feedback is important. So without further ado, perhaps before addressing investors to provide you with their thoughts and expectations, John, I could just ask you for a few closing comments to wrap up with, and then I'll divert investors.
Yeah, there's really one comment, and that is we're doing exactly what we said we would do. We're advancing our programs on the same time frame, using the same budget. Everything is on track, and we believe in our programs, and we're demonstrating that we're able to do what we said we would do.
Yeah.
That's great. John, Karen, thank you once again for updating investors this afternoon. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as I'll now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management team can really better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Oxford Cannabinoid Technologies Holdings, I'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session. Good afternoon to you all.